How many have been with us every year for 15 years? That tells you right there, our wingding is growing. Just this morning on all the news radio, they're calling our wingding the #1 Democratic fundraiser in the state, folks, in the state. What that is telling us is North Iowa is a place to be heard. They are coming to North Iowa, and boy, have we got some great slate for you tonight. How's Congressman Delaney? You ready to hear him? How about Congressman Tim Ryan? Are you ready to hear him? How about Andrew Yang? And then, of course, Michael Avenatti. What's cool about Democrats is we're bringing you every type of slate possible so you have a choice as Democrats. Keep in mind, this November, we need to have the blue tsunami. Are we going to do the blue tsunami? We need a tidal wave so huge that the Republicans are going to be shaking in their boots after November. So what a good time to kick this kid off. So right now, I'm going to ask Roger Hunt to come up and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Roger.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we renew our pledge to our flag and our country, I ask you all to stand who can, and let's observe a short moment honoring those who have gone before us, who have helped make this great country and left us with a challenge to follow. And now, if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag. United States of America, to the republic, one nation. And it's with great pleasure that I present to you three girls who will sing the national anthem. Once you hear them, you'd like to hear them again. Ladies and gentlemen, from Lake Mills, Iowa, take three.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight over the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streamed, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Star-Spangled Banner yet wave o'er the land
guys are awesome. Beautiful. Thank you. Weren't those ladies great? Give them one more big applause, folks. They're awesome. You know, folks, up and down this state, we have representatives, we have senators, we have people that run the state of Iowa every day, from the council seat all the way to supervisors, to state representatives, state senators, all the way to the state level. I'm going to ask every representative of a council seat, mayor, treasurer, if you'll please stand up. Everyone that holds a seat in the state of Iowa, please stand. Give them applause. They're the ones that run our state day in and day out, and they are the ones that look out for Democrats, our values, and what we stand for. So with that being said, I'm going to bring up a cheerleader, and he is one of our state's own. I'm glad to call him my friend. I'm glad to call him our chair of the Democratic Party, Troy Price.
Good evening, Iowa Democrats. How are we doing this evening? I must say it is an honor and a pleasure to be back up here for the Iowa Wingding. I believe this is probably my 8th or 9th now in a row. Even if I don't have to be here for my job, I always make sure to find a way to come up here. So I do want to start off by saying thank you to everyone who worked so hard to make this happen. Randy and the Wingding Committee have worked tirelessly to make this event a success every year. So please join me in giving them a hand for all the great work that they do. We also have a lot of folks here this evening who are some of the unsung heroes of our party. There are county chairs, our district central committee members, our state central committee members. These are folks who've given up countless hours, time after time, weekend after weekend, to help make our party better. So please join me in thanking them for all the service that they have done. And I know Randy acknowledged the elected officials who are here in this room, and let me say we have some of the best elected officials in the country right here in Iowa. But we also have a lot of great folks who are trying to join their ranks this fall. So if you are a candidate or an elected official, could you stand so that we can all recognize you for all the work that you're doing out there every day? So as I was driving up here this evening, I was realizing that the last time I stood at this podium, the last time I stood on this stage, was about 2 weeks after I became chair of the party. And at that time, after I just got elected, people kept coming up to me and saying, "Why in the hell did you want that job?" They said the Democratic Party was dead here in Iowa. But you know what I have said every day since then? Every time anyone would ever say that to me, anytime since the election in 2016, is, "You don't know Iowa Democrats, do you?" Because we went to work. We here as a party, we went to work. We didn't let anyone get us down. We never let anyone knock us down. We didn't let the GOP legislature knock us down. We didn't let Kim Reynolds knock us down. We haven't let Steve King knock us down. And we're certainly not going to let Donald Trump knock us down. No, we here at the Iowa Democratic Party, we Iowa Democrats do what we always do. We got back to work. We went out there and we had hard conversations. We took a good, critical look at our party and what we have done right, and more importantly, what we have done wrong. And instead of throwing in the towel, we gave up nights, weekends, time with family and friends to do the hard work necessary to rebuild this party. And while these conversations will continue, and the work of rebuilding our party is never done, we are here today because we all share one common set of values that can be boiled down into one seemingly simple phrase. As Democrats, we believe in the people of Iowa. Regardless of who you are, where you're from, or who you love, Democrats believe that every Iowan has value, that every Iowan should be heard, and that the only way for our country to succeed, the only way for our state to succeed, is if everyone is able to share in that success. But right now, those shared values are under constant attack from our friends on the other side of the aisle. With the help of majorities in the state House and state Senate, Governor Reynolds has implemented a dangerous Medicaid program that is literally costing Iowans their lives. She has consistently targeted our schools and universities with deep cuts while giving away millions of our hard-earned taxpayer dollars to out-of-state corporations. She has advocated for and taken away the rights of our workers and our voters. And she has signed one of the most extreme abortion bans in the country and even struck down safety measures that for guns in preschools and daycares. And that's just here in Iowa. Then there's the mess in Washington, D.C. Rod Blum, David Young, Steve King, along with Chuck Grassley and Joni Ernst, have left Iowa in their dust in their headlong rush to support Donald Trump and his un-American agenda. And we are seeing that every day here in Iowa, are we not? In fact, just today I was reminded by our friends, my friend Representative Sally Stutzman, who's here this evening, these tariffs that Donald Trump has unilaterally decided to do has cost our agricultural community hundreds of millions of dollars, and the price of soybeans dropped today by 42 cents. This is the GOP, or this is the Iowa, this is the country of Donald Trump, this is the country of Kim Reynolds, this is the country of the GOP, but it's not going to be that for much more longer. There is so much at stake in this election, and there is no doubt that we are facing right now an epic battle for the soul of our state. But with strong progressive Democrats in office, we can move the needle in Washington, we can move the needle in Des Moines, and we can get our country going in a direction once again. And that, my friends, starts with new leadership up and down the ticket, and that is why we as Iowa Democrats are working so hard to give Iowans the change that they want. We're going to make sure that we elect local leaders who are fighting for everyone by electing Democrats to every single courthouse in this state. We're going to put an end to the dangerous legislation that we see coming out of our state legislature and elect a strong, progressive, Democratic majority to the state House and the state Senate who will once again put the people of Iowa first. Let's put Amanda Reagan, let's put Sharon Steckman, let's put Democrats back in control. We're going to make sure that we have statewide leaders who are fighting for Iowans by giving our good friends, Attorney General Tom Miller, State Treasurer Mike Fitzgerald a little help. When we elect Rob Sand, the next state auditor, Tim Gannon, the next Secretary of Agriculture, and we elect our first African-American statewide official, and we send Deidre DeGier to be the next Secretary of State of Iowa. We're going to bring a much-needed check on Donald Trump and his corrupt administration by re-electing our good friend Dave Loebsack, and we're going to send him a little help when we elect Abby Finkenauer, Cindy Axney, and J.D. Schulten to be congressmen. We are finally going to dethrone the king. And yes, we are going to bring values-driven leadership back to the governor's office and ensure that every single Iowan has a voice in their government when we elect Fred Hubbell, the next governor of Iowa, and Rita Hart, the next lieutenant governor of this great state. Listen here, Iowa Democrats. We can do this. We must do this because the consequences are simply too great. Republicans asked for their chance to lead. They had that chance, and they have simply failed. It is time for real leadership once again in Iowa. It is time for Democratic leadership once again in Iowa. And if all of us, Democrats from all corners of this state, go out there, work hard, knock those doors, make those phone calls, talk to our friends and neighbors, and make sure that we leave nothing on the field, then we will be able to look back on the great year that was 2018 and tell our kids and grandkids about the year that we stood up, the year that we fought back, and the year that we ushered in a great new progressive future for the great state of Iowa. Thank you all so much. Have a great night, and let's go out and win this thing.
That's our very own Troy Price. Let me tell you, I'm glad he's at our realm. I'm glad he's my friend, and he's your friend. He's a Democrat we're going to keep for a long time, folks. All right, while we're on the governor's house, I'm going to announce, I think the sound of the First Lady of Iowa sounds appropriate. And I think it's just great to ask Charlotte Hubble to come up and talk on behalf of her husband, our next governor, Fred Hubble. So welcome, Charlotte Hubble.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here tonight. What a crowd. Everyone told me how awesome this event is, and I'm having a hard time seeing you, but there are a lot of you out there, and this is an energetic, exciting time to be a Democrat in Iowa. So, yes, my name is Charlotte Hubble. I'm married to Fred. And I want to thank you for coming out to hear me speak to you about why we need to elect him as governor of Iowa. First, though, have you noticed? Everyone's talking about a blue wave. I've been traveling around the state, and I can tell you that people are fired up and ready to win in November. I first met Fred at the University of Iowa Law School in property class. I guess you could say I acquired him. Every place I went, there he was. But I was immediately drawn to him because he was smart, a fun-loving, down-to-earth kind of guy, and a Democrat. That was important. He also had a ponytail, but he got rid of the ponytail after about a month in school. If you can imagine that, oh my gosh. But during our 41 years together, he's been the same genuine, caring guy I met in 1973. He's been a great father for our kids, no matter how busy he was at work, and a great husband and partner for me. One thing you should know about Fred is that when he says he's going to do something, he does it. He gets results. He doesn't just talk and let it go. That's the kind of governor we need today, and that's what he will diligently work to do, get results for the people of Iowa. Whether it's access to health care, education, or cleaning up the environment, Fred and I have worked together over the last 30 years to make Iowa a better place to live. This is what we hope to accomplish if we're elected in November, if he's elected in November. I'm not being elected to anything other than his wife and cohort in all this. But I think you would agree that Kim Reynolds has not put the interests of the people of Iowa at the top of her list of concerns. She's cut funding for schools. She's attached unreasonably to her privatization of Medicaid. I don't know what those numbers are for. Thank you. Okay, good. That's good to know. Okay. Her privatization of Medicaid has been disastrous. She's failed to fund mental health programs, and she's driven up a huge debt that will hurt the future of our state. After the 2017 legislative session, Kim Reynolds said, "This was the best session in Iowa's history." Fred and I looked at each other and said, "No, this was the worst session in history." That's when we knew That's when we knew Fred had to run for governor. We needed to step up and find someone who cares about the people rather than out-of-state corporations. And that's what he will do. We need a governor who has the experience and the priorities to fix this mess. Fred has the character, the compassion, the smarts, and he is very genuine and very direct. So if he says he's going to do something, he will work his darndest to do it. To get our state back on track, Fred has 3 key priorities. The first is to restore Iowa as a leader in education. Remember when Iowa was ranked first in the nation in education? What happened? Well, the Republicans came out with their slash and burn agenda to cut funding for public education. And Governor Reynolds and Republicans today continue to minimize the importance of public education. Fred will work to restore funding to K through 12 schools and also make preschool universally available for 4-year-olds. We also need to restore funding to higher education and expand funding for job training. We are both so disappointed at what this legislature has done to hurt students who want to pursue a degree in higher education, or the failure to fund job training and apprenticeship programs. Fred's second key priority is to make health care accessible to all Iowans. On day 1, Fred will work to reverse the Medicaid privatization law that has hurt thousands of disabled and elderly people. And have you noticed, Republicans seem to have turned their backs on women's health care. Defunding Planned Parenthood, now passing the most restrictive abortion ban in the country, Fred will work to eliminate that disastrous law and fully fund Planned Parenthood. Another issue Fred will prioritize is mental health. Yeah. Everywhere we go around the state, this is a topic, including education, that people are most concerned about. Seems many families have someone with a mental illness in their household, or they know someone with a mental illness. This has got to stop, along with our opioid addiction. We have got to turn this around. 8 years ago, Broadlawns Medical Center approached community leaders in Des Moines and asked them to help with a plan to expand mental health services in Des Moines and the 69 counties that Broadlawns served. Fred and I stepped up because we wanted to help, and now, as of 2 years ago, we have a new outpatient mental health clinic. We have 2 new staff psychiatrists, and there's a 50% increase in inpatient beds. This is what This is what Iowa needs: leaders who can get results, and Fred is that leader. We also need to improve Iowa's environmental health. As some of you might know, I was on the Environmental Protection Commission for 4 years, and believe me, I know a thing or two about water quality in our state. It's not great. It's time to install a permanent, long-term solution to clean up our rivers and lakes and stop the additional erosion of our soil. That includes funding the 3/8 of a penny that was passed in 2010, overwhelmingly passed, to improve our water and land quality. Fred's third key priority is to get incomes rising across the state. And he'll do this by expanding job training and apprenticeship programs in high schools, by increasing the minimum wage and allowing localities to increase the minimum wage higher if they so choose, if they can get it passed, restoring collective bargaining rights and workers' compensation, and investing in quality infrastructure and high-speed broadband across the state. So, how will we get this done? It starts by ending Kim Reynolds' fiscal mismanagement. We need to put the budget behind the priorities, not just talk about priorities and then fail to fund them. Fred will also put an end to $160 million of wasteful tax giveaways and instead invest in our state's future. That's how we get our state growing from the ground up. In closing, thank you for being here tonight, working hard to elect Democrats up and down the ticket this November. You know, they say it takes a lot of ripples to make a wave, and what you're doing is very important. So together we can get the job done. Thank you. Let's win it this November. Thank you.
Isn't she going to be a fabulous First Lady of Iowa? I think so. What do you think? Let her hear it. Fabulous First Lady. All right, folks. It's one of those times, we don't do this very often, but we're going to do a somber moment. We're going to do a memory. And it's something that we normally don't do at the Wingding, but we found it necessary to do that today. We've lost 3 individuals on our Wingding board. 2 of them is Denise and Charlotte Christie. Charlotte Christie is a longtime Democrat out of Hancock County. All Hancock knows her very well. She spoke her mind. She was talented. She was an artist, and she did a lot of things, and she worked hard for the Democratic Party. And let me tell you, she worked really hard with Bernie Bedell and Tom Harkin, Tom Vilsack. Let me tell you, she's one of those old-time Democrats, and she left us this year. She was one of our members on the Wingding when we first started 15 years ago. So in memory of Denise and Charlotte, I just want to take a few minutes and just silence to recognize them. Thank you. Then we lost another big one this year, and it's emotional. John Stone. He was a Sierra Gordo County chair, and he sat on this board for the last 11 years, working tirelessly to do what was right for Democrats. He was always one to work hard, work vigorous, and he would always say, there is tomorrow, and tomorrow. Because of John Stone is where we are in Sierra Gordo and where we are as Democrats. John touched a lot of lives, he touched a lot of hearts, and he touched a lot of memories. John was a file cabinet. If you wanted to find out a date or you needed to figure out who said what or what was said where, John would know it. He would know it, and he would tell you off who said it, when said it, and where it was said. That's what kind of a Democrat John was. John Stone got sick last summer, and he fought. But he still came to the Wingding. He still sat as chair of the Democrats. And then in December, we lost him after his birthday. One of the questions he asked was, will you remember me? You damn better believe it, we're going to remember him. So for just a couple minutes, I'm going to ask the Stone family to come up to the podium, please. Is the Stone family out there? Here we go. John's brother's coming up. I know I speak on behalf of a lot of Democrats. I miss John. I know a lot of his buddies miss him, and we miss him terribly. So we have a teardrop because we shed a tear for him, and this is for his family in memory of John Stone from the Wingding.
John appreciated everyone here. It was a passion for him. Some of my family are going to Mason City tonight to the fireworks, but John would say the real fireworks will be coming in November this year.
So, in John's memory and in Charlotte Christie's memory, we've got a couple things we're going to auction off to raise funds. The funds go back into fighting for Democrats. I'm going to be your auctioneer because some of you know I'm an auctioneer. There's three things that are in John's collection, and John was an avid John Kerry fan. So John has a book here that is from John Kerry, signed to him. And then, of course, we've got the Iowa caucus signed by our very own Skip. So Skipper, you're out there. And then he was an avid fan of Madeleine Albright. So we're going to auction off a couple things, if you guys are okay. Dig deep. The money goes to candidates up and down the board in memory of John. So we're going to go choice on these three. I need help. I can't see everybody, so raise your hand high, yoop, holler, whatever, and just kind of help me go here. This is from the family donating these. So somebody start out with a $10 bill. Anybody in it with 10? They're autographed books. Anybody 10? 10. I've got 10, 15. Anybody at 15? 10, 11, 15, 15. I hear 15, now 20. 15, now 20, but it at 20. I have 20, now 25, but it at 25. 25, now 30. 30, now 35, but it at 35, now 40. 35, now 40. 40, now 45. 45, $40 here, now 45 where? $40 here, now 45 where? $40 here, now 45 where? 45 where? 45 now 50. Anybody in at 50? I have 50 now 60. 60 now 70. What'd you bid it at 70? Looking at 70 now 80. 80 now 90. Bid it at 90. $80 now 90. Bid it at 90. $80 now 90. Bid it at 90. I have 80 over here now 90. $80 now 90. Bid it at 90. You want it? 90 now $100 bill. I have a $100 bill now 110. 100 now 110. Bid it at 110. $100 bill now 110. Bid it at 110. Sold it $100. Which one would you like? This one here? Alrighty, that one's out of the packet. Who wants to give $100 for each one of these? $100 across the board. It's going to Democrats. $100 each. John Kerry is up here, right here to John. John Kerry, $100 bill. Somebody start me out at a $50 bill per book. $50 bill. Anybody give me 50? Would you bid it at 50? 50? Would you bid it at 50? How about 25? Bid it at 25, looking at 25. I have 25 now, 30. 25 now, 30, bid it at 30. 25 now, 30, bid it at 30. I've got 30. 25 now, 30, bid it at 30. 25 now, 30, bid it at 30. I have 30 now, 40. 40 now, 50, bid it at 50. Would you bid it at 50? $40 now, 50, bid it at 50. $40 now, 50. These are signed. Bid it at 50, 40 now, 50, bid it at 50, looking at 50. This is signed by John Kerry. This is Skipper. 40 now, 50, bid it at 50. $40 now, 50, bid it at 50. Sold it. $40 there. What? All right, right there. Somebody start me out a $10 bill right here. I've got a 10. Would you bid it at 10? Anybody at 10? I have 10 now, 15 now, 20, bid it at 20. I have 15 here now, 20. I have 20 now, 25. 20 here now, 25, bid it at 25. 20 here now, 25. Got 25 now, 30. 25 now, 30, bid it at 30. 30 now, 35, bid it at 35. $30 now, 35, bid it at 35. 30 here now, 35. 35 now, 40, bid it at 40 now, 45, bid it at 45. 40 in the front, 45 now, 50. 45 now, 50, bid it at 50. 45 now, 50, bid it at 50. 50, looking at 50. Anybody in at 50? 50, would you bid it at 50? 50 now, 55. $50 here now, 55. Sold it, $50 right back there. All right. Folks, this money is in memory of John Stone. Now we've got a couple pieces here from Charlotte Christie. How many Hancock Countyers have we got out there? If you're familiar, I can't hear you. How many Hancock County people are out there? If you're familiar with Charlotte Christie, she made this donkey. She always believed in the donkey. Matter of fact, our first donkey was made for the wingding, and she designed our first donkey on the Democratic wingding. This is another piece. This is another piece right here that is from her collection. And then this is another piece that she made for Hillary Clinton. Okay? So choice on these. Somebody start out at a $10 bill. Choice. I'm looking at 10. Would you bid it at 10? 10, 10, bid it at 10, 10, 10, bid it at 10. Anybody at 10, 10, 10, bid it at 10, 15. Anybody at 15, 15, bid it at 15, 10, 10, 10, bid it at 5. Anybody in at 5, 5, 5, 5. Afterwards, let me know what you want to buy, and we'll give you a chance at buying it, okay? All the money goes to the good cause. All right, with that being said, we're going to move a little further, and we thank you guys for remembering. And what John would always say is onward and upward. So are we going onward and upward? John, onward and upward, buddy. We're moving on. All right, so with that being said, Susan Nelson, would you come up, please? Susan Nelson. Your panel.
So we've had two people here tonight who've been here before, but usually they're out in the audience taking notes, and they write on their wonderful news and opinion blogs afterwards. But this year they agreed to participate, and these are the founders of the two most widely read online news and opinion sites in Iowa. Laura Bellin of Bleeding Heartland has been the one we turn to for deeply researched and well-resourced analysis of politics and legislation for over 10 years. She spent the pre-program hour broadcasting candidate interviews online, where you will be able to see them later if you choose. I'm not sure where she is, but thank you, Laura, for coming. We have a YouTube channel now in addition to our Facebook, and so we'll post links for all of that for people who couldn't come tonight. Pat Reinert of Iowa Starting Line also joins us. Pat is a former Democratic campaign staffer who came here for the caucus in 2003 and stayed. He worked on Hillary Clinton's 2008 campaign and on state legislative races. He's going to lead a discussion on what we need to know about the new activism following Trump's inauguration and issues to focus on in the next few months. So thank you, Pat, and come on up. And also joining us are three of the really inspiring candidates from across the state who have stepped up to run, and one who is already serving. I wish we could have every single one of them up here. Every time I meet one, I think, wow, if we can get this person elected, we are going to be so much better off. The State Representative Liz Bennett has represented House District 65 in Cedar Rapids since 2015, the first openly LGBTQ woman to serve in the Iowa legislature. She is a champion for human rights, sustainable energy, and action on climate change. Where are you, Liz? I know she's in here someplace. Liz Bennett. Oh. Here she comes. Tim Knutson, I'm sorry. He's Norwegian, I forget the K. Tim Knutson is running in the far north country in House District 51, which includes Osage, Northwood, and Cresco. Tim is the proprietor of Tim's Tractors, serves as an assistant pastor in his church, and has had a long and distinguished career in healthcare administration. When he joins Amanda Reagan in Des Moines, he can solve the healthcare mess in Iowa. Welcome. Peter Leo is running in House District 12 in western Iowa, which includes Carroll and Manning. He is a lawyer, but he thinks of himself as a professional problem solver with a passion for people-first, solutions-oriented service. Welcome, Peter. Lindsay James is running in House District 99, which is Dubuque. She will bring her broad experience as a college chaplain, city commissioner, county official, and active leader in the NAACP to the Iowa House. Welcome. I just need to remind you, you need to get those microphones right close to your face so that they pick up. Thank you all for being here, and now I'm going to turn it over to Pat.
All right, and now for the part of the evening that you all came out for, especially the international press back there in the back. Thank you very much for the Wingding organizers for inviting Starting Line to be part of this and to be able to highlight some of our great legislative candidates who should give us a little bit of insight onto what's actually happening on the ground out there on campaigns. Just to give you kind of a general sense of where they're coming from, both Lindsay and Liz represent pretty well Democratic areas in Cedar Rapids and going to be represented out in Dubuque. Peter and Tim are both running in certainly Republican-leaning, mostly rural areas, but ones that are both very much doable this year. So let's start out. We ended up doing some good introductions up there, so we won't redo those. But for the three first-time candidates, and we have a whole lot of first-time candidates that have come out this year after Trump's election, people have gotten newly engaged. I want to just ask you real simply, what motivated you to run this year, to run for State House this year? And we'll just go down this way.
Great. Put me up first. Hi, I'm Lindsay James, Dubuque. You know, I found myself the day after the 2016 election, stumbling my way through a conversation with my 6-year-old daughter about our next president. And in this conversation, I can see her taking it all in, and I ask her, you know, what she's thinking. And the first thing that comes out of her mouth when I tell her who our next president is a question. And she asks, "Mom, does this mean we have to build a wall?" And it was in that moment when I realized that I could do more. You know, staring in the face of a 6-year-old who was picking up on all of this political conversation and realities, and I knew I could step up and do more. So that's why I'm in this.
Peter?
Thank you.
Thank you again, Pat. Thanks again, everybody. My name's Peter Leo. I'm from Manning, a small town in southwest Carroll County. I got into this race mostly because I moved back to Iowa after the 2016 election. My family and I had been living in Omaha for the previous 3 years. And as I was just beginning to pay attention to the news, watching what was happening in the legislature, I just thought that, you know, the state government had completely lost sight of its purpose, which was to try to help people and, you know, make their lives better. When we saw, you know, attacks on workers' rights, attacks on health care, budget cutting to the schools that's, that are now historically underfunded. I just thought that these can't be the priorities of Iowans. There's just too much out-of-state interest, there's too much out-of-state money flowing to the people in charge, and we had to change that, and I had something to say about it, so I decided to step up and run.
Thank you, Peter. All right, and Tim?
I'm Tim Knutson from Northwood, Iowa, just north of Mason City. Spent my whole career in here, and on retiring, moved back to our family farm west of Northwood. And after the 2016 election, I was so disheartened by what had happened that when I was presented with the opportunity to run for the Iowa House from our district, I thought rather than sit around and complain about it, if I can actually do something to make things better for the state of Iowa, and I do remember when Iowa was #1 in education. That we can fix that, and we can bring us back to being #1. And I know a thing or two about healthcare, and we can fix that too.
All right, well, thank you, Tim. Now, everybody up here has been helped out a lot by a lot of kind of the new activism that we've seen come out after Donald Trump's inauguration. Campaign offices have seen more volunteers in them. Candidates have been able to raise a lot more money for a lot of these state legislative races that sometimes got overlooked in the past. But none of this was ever really guaranteed. Back in January of 2017, right after Trump's inauguration, we saw all these huge record-breaking rallies and protests and marches. It was exciting, but we weren't sure if it was gonna stick around at all. But now here we are 3 months out, and it is still here, thankfully, helping out behind the scenes on all these races. Now, Liz, what I want to ask you about is that, back during that time, you spoke at a whole lot of these rallies and marches, the Women's March in Des Moines, I believe, and a couple local ones as well. What has impressed you? Who did you see actually come out to those things that hadn't been out there before? Has it surprised you of the folks who stuck around, and what do we need to do to keep the enthusiasm going?
Thanks, Pat. Oh, here we go. Somebody didn't want me to have a microphone. Aha. Well, so yes, as Pat said, I'm Liz Bennett, and I spoke at many of those early rallies, which was extremely exciting. And the reason it was exciting was because we were seeing people come out for the first time. People who said, I really didn't follow politics before because I guess I just didn't think it mattered, or I guess I just thought things couldn't get worse, but now I understand that things can get worse. And what has been particularly inspiring to me is that not only are folks understanding that things can get worse, but people also believe that through their involvement, things can get better.
Okay, now for some of the other candidates, have there been any good examples during your races where some of these new grassroots groups or just kind of new volunteers that you've seen come out?
Yes, I've seen quite a bit of interest in my race, Pat. It's not quite people organizing marches in the streets or anything like that, but the local Indivisible group has been active, not just in House District 12 where I'm running, but in House District 18 as well, which is just to the west of me, where there is unfortunately no Democratic candidate. Those folks have been very supportive of my race as well, even though they can't vote for me. They've been willing to write postcards, they've donated money, they've come out to events to see folks that are coming to town to campaign with me. And just a story that sticks with me is, there are people, who are volunteering with my campaign this year, where the last time they were involved in a Democratic campaign was when they worked for George McGovern in 1972. So it's not just new activism, maybe it's new old activism, but it's nice to see folks who were once engaged get back in the game again, and I'm happy to be a part of that.
I'd have to say one of the most powerful moments in Dubuque was following the response of high school age students in Dubuque to the Parkland shootings, and the demand of young people to say enough is enough, and to take ownership and leadership of our politics. And all of a sudden, high schoolers started to spam my campaign website and reach out and knock doors for me, and college-age college-age students, came out as well. And so I think that part of what is really invigorating and inspiring is that there are young people who are paying attention. And I always say that social change comes with social courage. And I think our young people will lead us with their social courage, thank you, and their heart and their passion. It's very encouraging.
A lot of the district that I represent, or that I intend to represent, look a lot like me, a little bit older. But back in March, when my campaign was just getting geared up, I got a call from a woman in Iowa City who was working with a group called Flip It, Iowa. I'm sure some of you have heard of that. And I was just blown away that this group in Iowa City wanted to do a fundraiser for me up in northern Iowa, but they wanted to do it in Iowa City with folks from down there, that the district is so blue that they don't even have Republicans running down there, that they were reaching out to candidates way outside their district to help them. That was really a booster for me.
Great, yeah, some of these grassroots groups that have just sprung up and really filled in holes that the party had, and they did it all on their own, sometimes with a little bit of guidance, and sometimes they just kind of figured it out. Now, the other big thing I want to talk about is that there's been, this big kind of national discussion after the 2016 losses and as we look forward to 2018. But we've been talking in Democratic circles about, whether, or there's been this idea of whether Democrats should focus more on turning out new voters or persuading swing voters or independent voters, or to try and win back some of those Obama-Trump voters, which we have quite a lot of here in this state, I think more than any other. Now, myself, having worked on campaigns a lot, that was never exactly an either/or question there. When you're out, when you're a candidate or you're running a campaign and you're on the ground, when you're knocking doors, you can hit both. There's a lot of messages that appeal to both. So I wanted to ask each of you, what have you seen? What has worked this year in 2018? In terms of messaging that has either appealed to some of those Obama-Trump voters or just swing voters in general, or voters who are upset with Republicans? And has there been anything specifically that you've done to turn out new people who haven't been as involved, or that you've done in past campaigns, or what do you think?
Well, one of the things that I've seen that has been interesting for me is that in the last election, I had folks who had both my yard sign and also Trump yard signs in their yard. And that was a shocker for me, because anybody who knows me knows that I'm about as far away from Donald Trump as you can get. So I really had to ask, what is up with that? And as I'm talking with folks again this year, I think it really is focusing in on what we can do together, focusing on positivity, not focusing on negativity. Because we can't go out there with a message that, well, we're not somebody else. We have to go out there with a message that says, we have a vision. We believe that we can help people, and here's how. So if you're somebody who also cares about regular people, then you want to be with me. And so I think that when I've sat down with people at Hy-Vee, had coffee with people, sat on their steps, talk to people at work. I work with a lot of folks who are around my age, a little bit maybe younger, who really need to have articulated to them, and also need to have the freedom to maybe go away from the decision that they made last time without feeling ashamed. So I think that welcoming people, welcoming conversations has been really effective for me.
When I first started door knocking a couple of months ago, and early on, I got a lot of response from folks that, gosh, is there an election this year? I just haven't been paying much attention to this. But as we got on into the months and spent some time at some of the county fairs, I would encounter people that would tell me, gosh, I've been a lifelong Republican until last year. And I get people at the doors when I talk to them, and I ask them what they do. And the teachers, my gosh, I get their attention when I tell them that, it's my goal to restore the rights that were taken away from them when they gutted Chapter 20. And healthcare is an issue that crosses all lines. When we talk about healthcare and we talk about the bad things that have been happening with healthcare in this state over the last couple of years, that gets their attention very much too. And I think we're seeing a resurgence, and people are starting to pay attention to what's been going on out there and are ready to vote Democrat this year.
Well, as far as bringing new voters into the fold goes, I try to stay active on social media as often as I can. I have to confess my Twitter game is not quite as good as Rob Sands, but I'll get there. But for me, mostly, it's just been knocking doors and just talking to people face to face about what my priorities are. Representative Keith Ellison from Minnesota, says that people should try to use politics to build community, and I stick with that. I take that message with me every time I go to the door because I don't know who's going to answer, how their day is going, what's important to them, but I want to invite them into this conversation about how can we do better for people. And as long as I am able to communicate with them that my priorities are good government with ethical leadership and just basic fairness for everybody, Republican, Independent, or Democrat, they respond positively to that message.
Yeah.
Very brief. What resonates the messages across, political party in Dubuque is healthcare and income inequality being the great moral issues of our time. And so I've actually been very pleased and surprised that as I sit on a porch swing with a Republican family, that their response is very similar to those across the aisle, outside of any political party, really passionate about fixing some of these very real issues in our state.
Cool, great, thank you. And then finally, for our last question here, all four of you either represent or are looking to represent districts that have been impacted in a pretty big way by Trump's trade wars and tariffs. For Lindsay and Liz, you've got a lot of blue-collar kind of factory-type workers who are getting hurt by some of the steel tariffs. And Peter and Tim, you've got a lot of farmers out there who are getting impacted by falling soybean and corn prices. What have you seen on the ground from either farmers or factory workers or just folks in general? What's been the political impact? And does it seem like some of them are kind of wavering in their support for Republicans if that's who they had supported, I guess?
Well, I think what I've seen is a lot of disappointment. I think folks who did not vote Republican the last election are not surprised by what has happened, because I think what has happened has been somebody who did a song and dance and who has continued to cater to corporate interests and big money interests. So there's no surprise there. I think then there are also some folks who, for whatever reason, are hardcore in support of the president, even if that hurts them and their family. But there are a lot of folks in the middle who last time really were looking for a change and really were hopeful that good things would happen for them and their family. So the disappointment is palpable. People are concerned about their families. They're concerned about their jobs. Every time we hear about another factory that is going to close or move their manufacturing somewhere else, particularly because of these tariffs. I have several solar companies within the Iowa 380 corridor, so there's been concern about solar tariffs as well. So I think people are disappointed, and they're looking for people who are actually looking out for their best interests, and that's where Democrats have an opportunity in this election.
I've been making a point to sit down every week in one of the coffee shops in town where a number of the local farmers, retired farmers, gather and just talk about BS of issues of the day. And I don't hear a lot of discussion about what's happened recently. I think a lot of them are embarrassed that they voted for a man who's now stabbing them in the back, and they don't want to admit that they may have made a mistake. But I think deep down, I know that some of them that I've talked privately to are willing to admit that things aren't going as well for them as they thought that they were when Trump BS'd them into voting for him.
In March, I went out canvassing in and around the town of Kyron, which is in my district, and for those who aren't familiar, is also the hometown of he who must not be named.
I think that 4th District congressman may be who you're referring to.
Yes, we do not speak his name. While I was canvassing there in a rural area, I met a gentleman who was about 63 or 4 years old. And he had lived on the same farm with his family since he was 2 years old. His father had purchased it decades ago, and then he had taken it over. And as we got to visiting, I could tell he was someone who had not supported President Obama and had voted for President Trump in the last election. And he told me eventually, I asked him how many acres he was farming, and he said, well, I'm not actually farming anymore. All of my land is cash rented out to somebody else who's doing soybeans this year, but I'm in Chapter 12 bankruptcy. And if we don't have a good year this year, I'm probably going to lose the family farm that I've lived on since I was 2 years old. And that was in March, before we decided to start playing games with international trade, like people's livelihoods are just something to mess around with. So I think of that gentleman a lot when I go out knocking on doors and talking to farmers about their anxieties over this trade war, because someone needs to stand up and fight for our farmers, and I intend to do that.
I concur. Yes, conversations, solar, steel, also small businesses. The conversations and the concerns with small businesses that I'm hearing are that often small business owners aren't wanting to speak out against it for fear of retribution for their own business. So it is a very real issue, and one that is hurting our neighbors and our families.
All right, well, fascinating stuff. I think especially on the trade issue is something that's going to continue to be an ever larger issue as we get down the stretch here to November. All right, well, thank you all very much for joining me. We got under time.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you.
Keep watching these four folks. Look them up online. Find ways to get involved. Really important races. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that very much. All right, we're going to get ready to move on down the line here. And Tamira, would you like to come up? So Tamira she is one of our young Democrats, our upcoming Democrats. She works on the J.D. Scholten campaign. She has done so much for the Democratic Party. She's been to the Stone Academy up in Minnesota, in D.C., Stone Academy, and she's representing all kinds of youth. Tamira, this is your stage.
Well, it's Tamara, but one day I'll be a household name, and you'll all know. You'll never forget, so. Okay. Well, one of the first times I met J.D. Scholten was actually at last year's Wingding. He'd approached me with a giant smile and a warm handshake, and he said that once his campaign was funded, that he'd be looking to hire and he'd love to have me on board. And I laughed. I was like, this guy's a first-time candidate going up against the king, so I don't know about that. But then this spring, he approached me with a Winnebago, with a full staff, an even bigger smile, and then I was like, oh, this is the real deal. So, yeah, we've come really far, but we still have a long way to go if we want to defeat Steve King. Steve King, yeah. Steve King has said too many horrible things to count. Earlier this year, King tweeted that diversity is not our strength. Exactly. Like who I am, I was appalled. But most of our staff, Team Scholten, is here tonight, and we've got a message for you, Steve. Our team is made up of people who are black, white, Asian, Latino, gay, straight, Republican, and Democrat. Yeah. So, Steve King, we've got a message for you. You don't think that diversity is our strength, but then you just wait until November because we are coming for you. Now, it is my great honor and pleasure to introduce you tonight to the man of the hour, J.D. Schulten.
Thank you, Tamara. And thank you for everyone who put on the Wingding. This is absolutely phenomenal. We have this every year, and it's pretty special. Recently, I was in Monona County, just south of Sioux City, and they have a lot of sweat bees there. And you know what they call them? They call them Steve Kings. Because they're super annoying, but they really don't do anything. So Tamara's part of my field staff, and the other staff, the other field members, I would like to raise your hand right now. They're around. Oh, they're back there. They're way back there. Anyways, we have a veteran. We have, like she mentioned, people of color. We have a Republican mother of 4 who works part-time for us, who said no more to Steve King. And one of my favorite parts about them is that every one of them is either from the district or graduated college from this district. And when he said diversity is not our strength, I think he's talking about his campaign staff. So it's an honor to be back here, and man, what a difference a year makes. And I know I'm not a typical congressional candidate, because the average person in Congress is 58 years old with a net worth of $1 million. I'm different. I'm 20 years younger, and I'm about $1 million short of that average. Now, last year I stood up here and I dared you to tell me this race is unwinnable. And look what we saw nationally. We saw Doug Jones in Alabama. We saw Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania. And just this past week, we saw razor-thin margins in a race that was considered unwinnable with Danny O'Connor. And in the primary, 10,000 people voted more for somebody not named Steve King than they did for Steve King. People are waking up. They're ready for change. They want a real leader. And they're using their right to vote for what is right. Now, nationally, I went and talked to these national groups recently, and they were wanting to talk about the last few years, and the numbers aren't pretty, I get it. And they wanted to give me the benefit of the doubt, and they wanted to talk about 2008. And I said, nope, we got to go back to 1984. Because in 1984, 80% of the now 4th Congressional District was represented by my 2 political heroes, Berkeley Bedell and then Representative Tom Harkin. And you see, I modeled my campaign after them, and it matches up with what we saw in Virginia and Alabama and Pennsylvania, and that it's, if you get out to the people, prove that you're trustworthy, and prove that you're going to fight for the people of your district, you're going to earn votes, regardless of their voter history. And it brings me to one of my favorite stories on this campaign trail. We were doing a meet and greet, and it was an hour long, and about at the 50-minute mark, a gentleman walks in. He sits over here at the bar, he goes back, and he starts getting aggressive with me, like, what are you going to do to beat Steve King? What do you know about farming? And I'm competitive, so I get a little bit aggressive back with him. Afterwards, it must have made somebody uncomfortable because they reached out to my staff, and they said, you know, we're sorry, this guy's a county bully. He's a big King supporter. So my staffer calls me up. and says, hey, we're really sorry about this guy. I'm like, who, the guy that came in late? Yeah, the county bully. I go, oh, that county bully wrote me a check. Now, in the last 12 months, there's a hunger here. And we saw it nationally, and it's happening right here in the 4th District. And while I believe that there needs to be new leadership, new ideas, and younger blood at the top of the Democratic ticket, I'm sick and tired of the Democrats being told that we're coastal elites. And for the last year, I've tried to show them what an Iowa Democrat is from the 4th Congressional District. And here are some of the figures. I put 35,000 miles on my personal car going to all 39 counties. Then we back that up by buying a used Winnebago RV made right up the road, calling it Sioux City Sioux, added additional 10,000 miles and hitting all 39 counties, and we're not stopping until November. We've also raised almost $1 million through over 12,000 individual contributions from all 39 counties and all 50 states, and the average number of contribution size is $20.14. And yeah, thank you. And one of the things I'm most proud of, it's no PAC money. I've also had about 200 slices of Casey's pizza and about 1,000 cups of coffee. So, but in the last year, I mean, what a difference a year makes. Last year, my parents were they were here. I had 2 friends from out of state. I had 2 staffers that I had no idea how I was going to pay for their next month. And I had one of my staffers' son. Now this year, we have over 10 staffers. In fact, I don't even know how many people we have on staff anymore, which is a good sign. We have my political director's son is now 16. Where's Liberty at? What's up, Liberty? Yeah. And my parents are still here. But the big difference is we have the support of Iowa and the support of you. I mean, when I think of Iowa Democrats, and I think of Democrats, period, I think of us. And at the heart of all this, I'm just a town kid 1 generation away from a farm right up the road from here. And when I'm elected, I'm going to work with everybody in this district. Because when it comes to things like healthcare and education and preserving the family farm and opportunity and a government and an economy that works for all of us, those aren't partisan issues. Like I mentioned, Berkeley Bedell is one of my heroes. And I got the pleasure to meet him a couple weeks ago. And they had a re-election poster of his from the early 80s. And here's what it said. Does the 1% now own your government? Does the 99% have a chance? How can we rescue our democracy? Representative Bedell is a man way ahead of his time. And as I look around this district, I see opportunity, but I'm frustrated with what's happening with consolidation and the loss of regional and community banks. The average farmer is 58 years old. The average dollar a consumer spends on food goes back to the farmer only 14.5 cents. That's the lowest in record. And then you got these tariffs. And, oh man, 42 cents today alone. And what ticks me off is you have a representative who's been in there for 16 years, and he's not fighting tooth and nail to even be on the farm bill because they're having the conference committee right now. We need leadership in this district. And those tariffs are like if you get punched in the face, and then by the same guy, you get an ice pack. Just don't punch me in the face, and it's not a big deal. Now, I just had my high school 20th year reunion. And as much as we produce corn, as much as we produce hogs and wind energy, the best thing we produce are people. And it didn't matter if my classmates went straight into the workforce or they went to college. The majority of them are doing great things, but they're not doing it in Sioux City or in this district. At best, they're doing it in Des Moines. We need to fight for an economy that allows for my classmates to stay here and for all of our kids. Thank you. Now, I want to end this with talking a little bit about my favorite moment of this campaign. And as much as being tweeted about by Mark Hamill, calling me JD the Jedi, it was pretty cool. My favorite moment of all of this is from the Harry Hopkins dinner in Sioux City last fall. The keynote speaker was my other political hero, Senator Harkin. And my mom, God bless her, when I was 10 years old, all I wanted to do was play baseball or basketball. But she made sure I was well-rounded. And she brought me as a 10-year-old to go see Senator Harkin speak. And she had a t-shirt from that day that said, Harkin for Senate 1990. So when I got up on stage, right before I spoke, threw the t-shirt on, delivered my speech, went right over to him, shook his hand. When he got on stage, he goes to JD, anybody who has the same t-shirt for the last 27 years is the type of penny-pinching Democrat that I like. You know, when I talk about Iowa, I don't know Des Moines. I don't know Cedar Rapids, don't know Iowa City, I don't know Dubuque. I know Larchwood, where my dad is from. I know Lake Mills, where my mom is from. I know Mason City, where my parents met as high school teachers. I know Ames, where I was born, 10 pounds, 2 ounces. I know Nevada, where we lived, and I know Sioux City, where I learned to play baseball and I currently reside. I know the 4th District. And in case you haven't been paying attention to my race, my campaign didn't come just to put on a uniform. We came to play, we came to compete, we came to win. And to Steve King, I got one message for you. I look forward to our debates. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you to the Iowa Wingdig for everybody that's put this on. This is absolutely wonderful. My name is J.D. Schulten, and I'm standing tall for all. Thank you.
If anyone is going to beat Steve King, it's going to be JD, right? Get out and vote for JD. Let's open a can of whoop on Steve King this fall. Good job.
Awesome. Thank you, buddy.
All right. That's exciting to know Steve King's going home this fall. All right, I'm going to ask Susan to come up.
If the bucket passers could start assembling up here, that would be a good thing. It's that time. My friend Kurt Meyer wanted me to make an announcement here this evening. He is not a one-trick pony. He has actually mastered several tricks. Kurt is chair of the Mitchell County Democrats. He is chair of the Tri-County Democrats, activists in Worth, Mitchell, and Howard County who work together the way all Democrats should work together and support each other, and who are going to elect Tim Knutson to the Iowa legislature this fall. Another trick, he is chair of the Finance Committee of the Iowa Democratic Party, and he is chair of Americans for Democratic Action, also known as the ADA, a national organization working hard to elect Democrats all over the country this November. And he is a steadfast friend to the Wingding, and we love you dearly. Clearly, Kurt is not a one-trick pony, but for our purposes here this evening, he's a good sport about one key element of our program. Ladies and gentlemen, to handle this important trick, let me call to the podium my dear friend, Kurt Meyer.
Thank you. You will hear many words spoken from this podium this evening, but there is only one pass the hat, so get ready. I know my friend Dave Mansheim and the Bucket Brigadiers are ready. I'll cue them momentarily. First, some straight talk. Most of us know the upcoming election is important. We can argue whether it is the most important election of our lifetime, or in the history of the Republic, or since creation. But we all agree this is a vitally important election. And most of us know it takes money to win elections. It takes more than money, to be sure, but money is essential. So as you grab for your green, don't make it that one with George Washington's face on it. Old George is not commensurate with what is required of us at this moment. You've probably got a Lincoln or two in your wallet. With a $5 bill, you're getting warmer. It must be climate change. But wait, what's that I see? You have a Hamilton, not the Broadway production. No, a $10 bill. Hamilton is surging right now, due in large measure to the musical. But if you haven't already seen it, let's face it, it's probably not going to happen. So you can easily part with a few Hamiltons. Think how much you're saving by not going and buying tickets to the production, and place a couple of those Hamiltons in the bucket when it comes your way. Now, Dave, you and your Bucket Brigadiers can fan out throughout the crowd while I talk for just a second or two about Andrew Jackson, whose mug graces the $20 bill. As Hamilton's reputation has soared, Jackson's reputation has shriveled. In fact, he's going to be moved or removed from the $20 bill. You shouldn't really be carrying around something with Jackson's face on it in 2018. It's just not you. Fortunately, the Wingding Committee is ready to both receive and recycle every single bill you have with Jackson's face on it, converting it into support for our great Democratic candidates. Tonight, we offer tableside pickup of any and all Andrew Jacksons you need to dispose of, courtesy of the Wingding Committee. And in the week to come, when friends ask you about the Wingding, you can say the lines were long, the wings were messy, the speeches went on and on, but they helped purge me of my Jacksons. And in doing so, it cleansed me from any guilt I may have felt about the Trail of Tears. So with your support, there will be no Trail of Tears on our side after the polls close in November. Only scattered tears of joy. Thank you very much.
All right, folks, are you having a good time? The best is yet to come. Are you ready? Now is the time of the night where we recognize a Democrat, a leading Democrat, and a leading performer who does an outstanding job, whether it be national or state level. This person is going to be given an exemplary award, and I'm going to let Dean Ginth come up and tell you all about the beacon. Dean. Dean Genth, please.
For several years now, my husband, Gary Swenson, and I have had the privilege to be able to donate and sponsor the award given to a stellar Democrat who truly has performed in a way that is exemplary and shines a light on the path for all future Democrats to follow. So it goes without saying that tonight's award winner of the Beacon Award for 2018 is someone who is very near and dear to our hearts. You know, it really means a lot, I think, for all of us in this room who live in Sharon Steckman's Iowa House District, to be able to say that we have somebody that we have in Des Moines speaking for our voices in a way that we can say we've got family in Des Moines looking out for us. I often think it's, for me and Gary, we really have a heart that says, in Des Moines we have a friend looking out for us. And I was talking to her son tonight here before we ate dinner, and he was telling me that his mom, Sharon, is so dedicated to serving us in Des Moines that she has retired from cooking. So I guess that we all need to dig deep into our campaign contribution pockets so that she can not have to spend time in the kitchen and can be doing the hard work that she's doing every day, day in, day out. I look at all the events that she attends. I know that Gary and I get out and about a lot, and people think that we're everywhere all the time. But it seems like Sharon is at all the events we're at, and then I hear about 10 more that she's at between events that we see her at. So it gives me great pleasure to bring on stage today's 2018 Beacon Award winner, and deservedly so, Representative Sharon Steckman.
Wow. When I got the call, I was like, not me. I was really surprised. This is just gorgeous, and there's some wonderful people, very deserving people that have gotten this before me. And you know, people don't receive honors in a silo. I think about when I started this journey 11 years ago, and the people that helped me along the way, I'm indebted to. John Groniga had the first event for me. Didn't bat an eyelash. Sure, I'll do it for you. I had a crackerjack team of a committee. John Colombo, Pat the Democrat, Mary Beth, Sybil. I'll probably forget people. I know I will. Carol Iverson. Just so many people that have reached out and helped me. Dean and Gary have been always, if I ask them, can I have an event at your house, there's never a hesitation. So this really isn't for me, it's for all the people that have come forward and helped me. Kay Larson has been with me from the beginning, and my family. I'm just so proud of my family and how supportive they are of me. My son, the first thing he said, my oldest son said to me when I told him I wanted to run, he said, "Mom, you better have thick skin. People are going to say things to you that you might not like." And yes, that does happen, but who can say out there they've had a chance to meet Madeleine Albright, Amy Klobuchar? I mean, I could go on. And the Democrats that I've met, Liz Bennett, Abby Finkenauer, I love working with them. It's been my privilege to serve you. So thank you so much for this award. I would like to say the House this year has 95 top-notch candidates running against the Republicans. We're going to take back the House. The last 2 years have been devastating. They have been the worst 2 years that I can remember in my 10 years down at the House. We decimated education, we decimated healthcare, and the environment. We pass a water bill that really does nothing. So we need to get control back, and I want you, those of you that have supported me in the past, do everything you can. Have coffees, get down to headquarters and work. Help us get those 95 candidates in the House and roll them over. That's what we need to do. Thank you so much.
You know something, guys? I speak on behalf of a lot of North Iowans, but I speak on behalf of a lot of Iowans. There's a reason why we have Sharon in the House. She's awesome. She's going to continue to work, and we're going to put her back in for years to come. We love you, Sharon. Thank you. Hit it hard, girl. Woo! All right, here we go. Are you ready? The time has come. Our first speaker of the night, John Colombo. Come on up, bud.
Oh, I'm afraid I'm not the actual first speaker of the night, but I am introducing the first speaker of the night. So, a few months ago, I was listening to a podcast called Waking Up with Sam Harris. I don't know if any of you guys, I know there's at least one in the audience. And I heard this gentleman on this podcast, whose name I didn't quite get at the time, but he had these amazing big ideas. It was this absolute mind-splosion of ideas. And I got a phone call shortly thereafter from another friend of mine. We were talking, and he listens to the podcast too, and he said, "Hey, did you hear that guy?" And this is the first time it's ever happened. We don't usually, come across something so amazing that we call each other because it's important. But Andrew Yang was the gentleman that was on this podcast with Sam Harris. And he had these huge ideas. Things like humans are more important than money. And a unit of human capitalism economy is in each person, not each dollar. And that markets exist to serve common goals and values. And he had these, even bigger ideas like a universal basic income. Yeah, I know, it's out there, isn't it? But so, Mr. Yang is an entrepreneur. He's worked in startups and early stage growth companies as a founder or executive for almost 20 years. He was named a presidential ambassador of entrepreneurship by the White House and a champion of change for his work with a national entrepreneurship fellowship called Venture for America, which he founded in 2011. Venture for America helped to create almost 3,000 jobs in Detroit, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and other cities. And it is my distinct honor to welcome to the Wingding stage, Mr. Andrew Yang.
Thank you all. Thank you, Iowa. Oh my gosh, it's incredible to be here. I want you to reflect a little bit on what brought you here tonight, because I was thinking about what brought me here tonight. And the Democratic Party of the United States of America is the greatest hope and force for progress in our country today. And you all are going to determine its future. It is not an exaggeration at all to say that the future of the country rests in your hands. And thank you all for the incredible work that you do, leading us every day and fighting the fight. I know it's been hard this last couple of years, but help is on the way. Now, I'm not from here, as you may have gathered. My parents immigrated to this country in the 1960s. They met at graduate school. I was born in a town called Schenectady, New York. My father worked for GE and then IBM. My father's a physicist, my mother's an artist, my brother's a psychology professor, and I became an entrepreneur and CEO. I built an education company that was sold to a public company in 2009, and I looked at the nation's problems at that point. I'd made a little money, and so I thought to myself, well, what are the biggest problems that I see? And the biggest problems that I saw were that so much money and energy and talent was heading to the coasts and not to places like Iowa, including people who are from places like Iowa. Many times they thought they had to leave for better opportunities. And so that was the problem that I saw, and I said, we can do something about that. So I donated $120,000 of my own money, started calling rich friends, and said, do you love America? And then the savvy among them said, what does it mean if I say yes to that question? And then I said at least $10,000. And then enough of them said, I love America, where we launched with a budget of about $250,000. Today our budget's about 25 times larger. Thousands of young people have joined or have applied to Venture for America, and hundreds have headed to cities around the country to help create businesses and help businesses grow. So that's what I've been up to for the last 7 years. I'm an entrepreneur and a problem solver who likes math. And I say that because people have told me that the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Now, I'm here tonight to tell you all a story in numbers, in part. And I'm going to answer a question that you have been grappling with for the last 2 years, and it may be perhaps the most important question of our time. And that question is this: why did Donald Trump win Iowa by nearly 10 points in 2016? For that matter, why did he win Michigan? Why did he win Ohio? Why did he win Pennsylvania? Why did he win Missouri? Why did he even win Wisconsin? Now that is the question of our time, and the answer is in the numbers. Because again, I love numbers, so I dug in. And the most direct correlation I found was that the more manufacturing jobs were lost in a voting district due to automation, the more blue turned to red in that district. The reason why Donald Trump is our president today is that we've automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Wisconsin, and nearly 40,000 right here in Iowa. How many of you personally know someone who has lost his or her job in manufacturing over the last number of years? I'm sure a number of you do. And I've been in these communities in the aftermath of the plant closing. I heard from Mitch right here in Olwine in northeast Iowa what happened there. When jobs disappear, that's when despair takes its place, and that's when blue turns to red. So I have some bad news. I was just in Silicon Valley last month, and this is going to get worse before it gets better. The engineers and scientists of Silicon Valley are working on solving the problems of today, the business problems of today. But as they succeed in solving these problems, their solutions are not going to improve your lives or our lives together. What they're going to do is they're going to make human labor, your labor, our labor, less and less central to the economy and more obsolete. Now, this may seem far-fetched or futuristic to some of you, but it's the hard truth. And if you look around you, Iowa has lost 12,000 retail jobs since 2001. How many of you have noticed stores closing in your neighborhoods or area? There are another 178,000 hardworking Iowans in retail and trade right now, and 3 of your 17 malls are in danger of closing. This is going to get worse. There are another over 30,000 Iowans who drive a truck for a living, and this is the most common job in 29 states. My friends in Silicon Valley, and I am friends with some of them, please don't hold against me, but my friends in Silicon Valley are working on trucks that can drive themselves. They say that they're 98% of the way there, and these trucks will start hitting the highways in 5 to 10 years. So the question is, what's going to happen to the drivers at that point? There are thousands of call center workers in Iowa. How many of you saw that Google recently demonstrated software that can do the job of a call center worker? Someone's nodding here. How many of you saw that? Well, you can Google it, and it's there. But these changes are real. Artificial intelligence is real. Autonomous vehicles are real. This is the greatest economic and technological transition in the history of mankind. Donald Trump is the manifestation of this transition. And our government has been decades behind in being honest about it and addressing it. Now, Before deciding to run for president, I decided to try and talk to various political leaders about the fact that this is the core set of issues. And what do you think their responses to me were? Go ahead and shout them out. This will be fun. Sorry, go ahead. Wah wah. It sounds like you were in the room. So the solutions I heard were these. 1, we cannot talk about that. 2, we should study that further. And 3, we must educate and retrain Americans for the jobs of the future. Now that third one sounds great. I'm a Democrat, I love education, I love retraining, but again, I looked at the numbers, and we know what happens in the aftermath of losing these manufacturing jobs, that only less than 10% of manufacturing workers qualified for federally funded retraining programs, and if they did participate, the success rate was less than 20%. We know that almost half of manufacturing workers that lost their jobs left the workforce and did not work again, and that nearly a quarter of manufacturing jobs that lost their jobs left the workforce and never worked again. So those are the numbers. That is the story the numbers are telling us, and this is the challenge of our era. Now, the question is, what are we going to do about it if the problem is this big? And the answer is, as John alluded to, we must fundamentally shift the way we perceive work and value in our society. And I have a 3-part plan to make this happen and solve for the greatest issue that threatens our way of life today. Now, the first is the freedom dividend, where every American adult would receive $1,000 free and clear, no questions asked, every month to pay your bills, invest in your families, start new businesses, and do what you want to do because you know how best you would use that money. Already right now, 31% of Iowans are working full-time and cannot make ends meet, and 59% of our fellow Americans cannot pay an unexpected $500 bill. They are living paycheck to paycheck, week to week, and you know that is the reality for many of your friends and neighbors. And we can change that. We can give Americans a raise. So many of you might think, wow, that sounds phenomenal, too good to be true, but I want to give you some background and history. A law almost exactly like this passed the House of Representatives in 1971 under Richard Nixon. Martin Luther King was for it. 1,000 economists signed a letter saying this would be great for the economy and society. And a plan just like this has been in effect in one state for 36 years, where it has created thousands of jobs, helped improve children's nutrition, and lowered income inequality. And what state is that? You may or may not know. Yeah, it's Alaska. And they use oil money. And I'm going to ask you all today, Democrats of Iowa, what is the oil of today? Technology. That's right. That is the oil of today. So my plan, the freedom dividend, would put $16 billion into the hands of Iowans every year so that you could pay your bills and do everything that you would do with $1,000 more per month, and it would create over 40,000 jobs in Iowa immediately. Now, this is a very, very big plan and a big move, but it's something that we can achieve because, again, you determine the future of this country, and we need to build an economy that actually puts human goals and values front and center, invest in our people, and build a trickle-up economy. The Republicans have been selling that trickle-down garbage for decades, and we know it doesn't work at all. They even know it doesn't work. They know it's nonsense. So we're going to build a trickle-up economy from our people up, our families up, and our communities up. And that's the first big move I'll make as president. The second is that we need to get healthcare costs off the backs of American families and businesses. I've been an entrepreneur and CEO, and I know it's harder to expand your business, it's harder to hire, it's harder to start a business, it's even harder to switch jobs. We spend twice as much as other industrialized countries on our healthcare than other countries because our system rewards activity and not healthfulness. And as president, I will move us towards Medicare for all and get the incentives right. Thank you. And the third thing is that we have to change the way we measure progress in our economy. GDP is something we invented less than 100 years ago during the Great Depression. And even the inventor said this is a terrible measurement for national well-being. So of course, what do? We start using it as a measurement for national well-being. Oh, it's true. He was a smart man. He was smarter than the people that have been using it. Now, I'm running for president right now, and my wife is working much harder than I am. And those of you who have kids at home, raise your hand if you have kids at home. Most of you? Got to be more parents than that. My wife is at home with our young boys who are 5 and 2, one of whom has special needs, and she's working much, much harder than I do. What does GDP value her work at right now? 0. And we all know that's nonsense. We know that she's contributing much more value than the average hedge fund investor or Silicon Valley programmer. We need to shift to new measurements for our economic progress, things that matter to us, like childhood success rates, mental health and freedom from substance abuse, environmental quality, median income and wealth, proportion of elderly in quality care that can actually retire with dignity. These are the measurements that would actually tell us how we're doing. And as president, I will establish the American scorecard and present on how we are doing every year at the State of the Union. So these are the 3 big ideas to get us through the greatest economic shift in human history. And I'm going to close with a conversation I had in Washington, D.C. that will be familiar to some of you. So I was going through these issues and saying, look, this is a giant technology shift, and the American people are being devastated through no fault of their own. What are we going to do about it? And this is what someone said to me. He said to me, you are in the wrong town. That this town is not a town of leaders. This is a town of laggards and followers. We will be the last people to figure this out. And what you must do, Andrew, is you must create a wave in other parts of the country and bring it crashing down on our heads, and only then will we understand. And that is why I'm with you here tonight, Democrats of Iowa. I need your help to create this wave, to build an economy from the ground up, to show that we still live in a democracy and that America needs your leadership right now. America needs your leadership, your courage, your vision, your compassion, your faith, and your fellowship to light the way. Now, I've got to say that I've been looking forward to this occasion for a long time, because I know the power you have in your hands, even though you don't always feel it day to day, because you are fighting the fight. But I'm going to tell you that you are some of the most powerful people in this country, and that we're all going to come to you and ask you for your support, and that's what I'm doing here tonight. But together, if we work our hearts out, we can show our fellow Americans that we still live in a democracy, that people matter more than money, that our values are more powerful than any lobbyists, and that if we put everything we have into it, we can still build a country that we are proud of to leave for our children. Thank you very much, Democrats of Iowa. Great night. God bless you all. God bless the United States of America. Thank you all.
All right, what'd you guys think of that speaker right now? Has the Wing Ding got it going on this year? Only one. Ooh. Has the Wing Ding got it going on this year? All right. All right, the next member coming up to announce our next speaker, Stephen Jewell.
I don't know if I really need this thing or not. I could probably yell loud enough to you could hear this. But like Randy said, I'm Steve Jewell, and it's my pleasure that I get to announce John K. Delaney. John was born into a blue-collar family. His father was a 60-year member of an International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. His mother was a stay-at-home mother and who raised John and his sister. While growing up in Woodridge, New Jersey, John worked at several different jobs where he learned the value of a good day's hard work. How many in here know that feeling? John attended Columbia University and Georgetown Universities on scholarships he received from his father's union, the VFW, American Legion, and the Lions Clubs. John understands the way forward for this nation is through education. John has started 2 businesses and has vast experience in 21st century jobs. In 2004, John was named, now here comes a word that my wife's going to say I didn't say right, Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young. Told you. Having a business based in Montgomery County, Maryland, John decided his next venture would be to run for Congress. John won his race in 2012 for a seat from Maryland. John was named one of the world's 50 best leaders by Fortune magazine that first year. 50 best leaders. John is the leading voice on one of my favorites, Veterans Affairs, higher education and infrastructure. John announced early in 2017 that he was throwing his hat into the ring for President of the United States. He believes that he can and will help bring this country together and move it forwards. Let's give a warm Iowa welcome to John K. Delaney.
Hope I did got it. You did a great job.
Thank you.
You're giving me your introduction there. I could read it again. Thank you, Steve. You know, that was a very nice introduction, and Steve, I appreciate that, and I appreciate that you served our country. Let's hear it for Steve and all our veterans. And Randy, thank you for having me, and congratulations on all this success. So, I actually think being invited to the Wingding this year and the Wingding next year, in the fullness of time, people will look back and say, what an honor. Because this is going to be the last Wingding where Steve King represents this event. And next year is going to be the first Wingding where who represents this event? JD. Right. So I think it's a big honor to be here for this historic Wingding. Thank you all for having me, and I want to thank you for what you do. None of us would have the privilege of engaging in public service but for the fact that people like you give your time, give your resources, give your energy, give your passion, give your heart. So, you know, the other side may have a whole bunch of super PACs. We've got super volunteers. So thank you. And it's also an honor to be here with all the other great elected officials. And I really enjoyed listening to Andrew's presentation. He and I have started to get to know each other. That's a very smart presentation, and he's absolutely right. Technological innovation is the most powerful force affecting our world today, and you should listen to what he has to say. And then, of course, my friend Tim Ryan, who just told me that I should mention him 3 times. But what I will say about my really good friend and colleague, Tim Ryan, who is an extraordinary member of Congress, he's a good friend, and he really, and you're going to hear it from him in a minute, I mean, he really speaks to the heart and soul of this party, which is the working family. But I got to say, he wasn't the first congressman from Ohio that I actually met today. So I was given a speech at the Soapbox. You all know where that is, right? At the State Fair. And so I'm giving my speech, and I look down, and John Boehner's there. I'm serious. Speaker Boehner was sitting, he was actually standing, he wasn't sitting, but he was listening to my presentation. So I stopped and recognized Speaker Boehner, and I thanked him for the support, you know, I said, it was kind of a fun moment, you know, we were joking. So, you know, Tim, you're only the second person from Ohio I've seen today. And I also want to thank my wife, April, for being here with me. 29 years. 29 years of being married to the most amazing woman. It's an absolute blessing. Greatest thing to ever happen to me. My youngest daughter is with me as well. I have 4 daughters. They're all doing pretty well today. You know, you're only as happy as your least happy child. And so far, we had a good day today. So, Grace, thank you for being here. But April's here with me, as is Grace. My other 3 daughters couldn't make it, but the reason we're here is because we're going to finish up going through all 99 counties in this great state of Iowa this weekend, which I think is something that's very important to do for lots of reasons, including to make the point that Democrats have to campaign everywhere. We have to campaign everywhere. We cannot write off any part of this country. Particularly now, because so many people are going to listen to us who've never listened to us before. They're going to listen to us, even if they supported the president. Because now that they see him in action, they see that he's degrading the norms in our society and reducing our role internationally. And he's acting in a lawless manner, and a lot of people are concerned about it. So we should be campaigning everywhere. Also here in Iowa, with what he's done with trade, this gives us an opportunity to talk to voters who haven't listened to us in a long time. And it's incredibly important that we all campaign and support JD, Cindy, Abby, and all the other people who are going to turn the House of Representatives, where I serve and where Tim serves, blue, so that we can actually have a check on this president. And that's why you need to elect Fred Hubbell as your governor, because he will stand up for this agricultural industry. But it's also important to go around and listen to people, because I can tell you, whether I'm campaigning in Mills County, in Greene County, in Dallas County, or whether I'm campaigning back in my home state of Maryland, what I hear from voters is consistently the same. What they want us to do. They want us to start doing real things to make a difference in their lives. They want their elected officials to do their job, make their lives and the future more prosperous, more secure, and safer. They want us to focus on the basic things that matter to them: their job, their pay, the opportunities for their children, their health care, the education for their kids, the education for themselves. And they want us to actually come together and get things done for the American people. They hear that that's what they're looking for. They hear that the economy is, they read that the economy is doing well. But as Andrew said, half this country can't afford a $500 expense that came out of nowhere. Whether it's their health care or their car or something in their house, they can't afford it, half the country. So it doesn't really matter how the stock market's doing. Right? They see that the unemployment statistics are low, and they're happy about that. But so many of them are working 2 or 3 jobs, or so many of them are worried about whether their kids can actually find a job in their communities, or do they have to move back? So they have tremendous anxiety, and you only really understand this if you campaign everywhere. And the reason they have such anxiety is because their federal government has failed them. Their federal government has failed in their most basic responsibility to do real things that make a difference in their lives. From my business career, I used to have an expression that the cost of doing nothing is not nothing. The cost of doing nothing is not nothing. We have watched for decades as this world has changed tremendously. Technological innovation, kind of stuff Andrew talked about. Globalization, things that have been utterly transformative to every aspect of our society, our economy, the future of jobs, our security, our demographics. And has the federal government been a partner in doing the things we've needed to do to prepare our country and our citizens for this change? No. Why? Because they were too busy fighting. Right now in our country, 70% of the kids in the United States of America live in a county where there's no evidence of any upward economic mobility. 70% of our kids. Yet last year, 80% of the money in new companies went into 50 counties in this country. So you have 1.5% of the counties getting all the startup investment, yet 70% of our kids live in a place where there's no upward economic mobility. It shouldn't be a surprise that if you were born in 2010, the chances of you earning more than your parents, you know the American dream, work hard, play by the rules, do better than your parents. If you were born in 2010, only 20% of our kids will likely do that. Go back to 1980, it was 50% of our kids. Go back to 1950, it was 90% of our kids. The American dream in 60 years has evaporated. And this is personal to me, because I have lived the American dream. Right, I was born in a blue-collar family. My dad was an electrician. My parents and my family were working people. I had a great education. I became a successful entrepreneur. I started 2 businesses, took them public on the New York Stock Exchange, was the youngest CEO in the history of the New York Stock Exchange. I know how the private economy works. And now I've had the privilege of serving my country in the Congress of the United States. My story, like so many's, it's a story of the American dream. But it's evaporating, it's vanishing. And we can't wait any longer to do the things we know we need to do to make a difference on these issues. We can't wait any longer. You can't wait any longer here in Iowa, and people can't wait any longer all around this country to do the real things we need to do to turn around huge parts of this country, to get private, public, and jobs located, private, public, and capital invested in these communities and jobs located in these communities. We can't wait any longer to build the new social compact for our citizens so that they all have a shot. Every kid in this country should start in pre-K, and they should have something after high school that's free, either community college or career and technical training. Pre-K through 14 should be the new K through 12. We can't wait any longer. We can't wait any longer, Iowa, to have universal health care in this country. It's a right of every citizen. We can afford it. And in a future where people are going to have 5, 7, 10 jobs, why should your health care be tied to your job? That's a terrible model. My dad, the electrician, spent 60 years at one job. Of course it made sense to tie your health care to that job. We can't wait any longer. We can't wait any longer to fix our broken immigration system and do comprehensive immigration reform. We can't wait any longer to fix our criminal justice system, which incarcerates 1 in 3 African American men. We can't wait any longer, Iowa, to expand the earned income tax credit so that workers who are working hard and have 2 to 3 jobs can get by. But we're not going to be able to do any of these things unless we come together. And this is the opportunity for the Democratic Party. What this country needs, what is the calling for the Democratic Party, is to step forward and be the party that wants to bring us together, whether you're a progressive Democrat who wants change, whether you're a centrist Democrat who wants solutions, whether you're an independent who just wants your elected officials to put your country ahead of your party, right? Or whether you're part of the fastest shrinking party in the United States of America right now, the Republican Party, and you're a disaffected Republican. We should be the party that brings these people together in a new and exciting coalition, because this coalition can win, it can win easily, and it can govern, and it can get things done. Because this coalition agrees we should have universal health care, that we should invest in infrastructure, that we should have immigration reform, that we should have criminal justice reform, that climate change is a problem, that we need a national artificial intelligence strategy, and on and on. There's broad support for these concepts in the country, but what the country needs is a party to step forward and say, we want to lead. We want to lead with dignity, with respect, with honor, with honesty, with strength. This is our calling. And we need to call upon the American people, which is why I'm running for president, to remind them that unity and common purpose is the cornerstone of this American experience. It is the beating heart. It is the beating heart of our nation. And the Democratic Party has to step forward, just like we always have. When the country needed a New Deal, we had Roosevelt, who was a Democrat. When the country needed uncommon strength to end the Second World War, we had Truman, who was a... When the country needed a new generation of Americans to be inspired and come to Washington and serve their country and make a difference, we had President Kennedy, who was a... When the country and the voiceless needed someone to give them a voice, we had Johnson, who was a Democrat. When the country needed someone to step forward and restore trust in a corrupt government, we had Jimmy Carter, who was a... When the country needed someone to step forward and show that we can build an economy for everyone, not just the top, but also the bottom, we had President Clinton, who was a... And you, Iowa, gave us the man who gave us hope after we had spent $6 trillion on wars we never should have fought. And that was Obama, who was a proud... This is our time. I'm running for president to be the Democrat who can bring this country together, turn the chapter on decades of hyper-partisan politics, where people put their own interest ahead of their country, where they divide us for short-term gain and we pay the price in the long term, where we build a coalition of right-minded Americans who are thinking about the future and want to prepare our country for the future so that it's more prosperous, more just, and more secure. Reestablish our role in building the new world order. This is the calling of the Democratic Party. This is why I'm running for president, to lead that coalition, to lead that party, because if we get together, we're going to win every election, and we're going to govern. And we're going to get real things done for the American people. So that this country, this blessed, marvelous country that has the best hand in the world, it just needs to play it better. So that this country can become again what it has always been, which is a country of opportunity, where everyone has a shot, no matter where you live, not of birthright, where you got to be born to the right city, the right family, go to the right school. This is our time. This is our calling. We can do this. This is a movement. This is why I'm running for president. Thank you, Iowa. God bless you.
All right. Are you guys having a good time? Iowa can't hear you. Are you having a good time? There it is. We're halfway done. 2 more to go. Catherine, come on up.
Our next speaker was first elected to Congress when he was only 29 years old. After 8 terms, Congressman Tim Ryan has been in office a while, but he still has the energy and passion that he first brought to Washington from Ohio's 13th District. He is a member of the powerful House Appropriations Committee, which controls the money that the government spends. He is co-chairman of the Manufacturing Caucus, where he is a leader in the fight to strengthen America's manufacturing base and reform U.S. trade policy. He believes we have to help American manufacturers and trained, educated workers join together to continue to lead the world in developing new industrial technologies. He believes that we need a level playing field with foreign competitors, especially China. He is a relentless advocate for working families. He is a champion for making college affordable, revitalizing America's cities, and improving the health and well-being of American families and children. Congressman Ryan is trained as a lawyer, but in the House, his practice includes mindfulness and meditation. He created a Quiet Time Caucus and is the author of a book on how mindful living can change our bodies and our country. Please take a deep breath, focus your attention, and give a rousing welcome to Congressman Tim Ryan.
My goodness. Thank you so much. Thanks, Catherine. And thank you to all of you who are going to help JD and Abby become members of Congress from Iowa. So thank you already for all the hard work you're doing. I come from an area in Northeast Ohio, just outside of Youngstown. And my district includes all of the city of Youngstown, and it goes west to Akron. And it's an area of the country that is a lot like Iowa in many ways. People just want a fair shake. They want to work hard. They want to play by the rules, but they want all of that hard work to pay off. And as has been said here several times tonight, unfortunately, so many parts of our country aren't working for people who are working real hard and playing by the rules. And a few months back, periodically I'll go to a council person and say, hey, you know, take me around your ward. I want to see what's going on. And so I got a council person in Youngstown, and I said, let's go take a ride. So he took me for a ride in Youngstown, and we went to the ward, and I said, just take me to the toughest areas of the ward. I want to see what's really going on and meet some of the people who are there. And so we spent a few hours on that afternoon. It was pretty hot. It was 90, 95 degrees. And we pull into this woman's driveway, and he said, you got to go meet Mrs. Duke. So we pull in to Mrs. Duke's driveway, and this is a neighborhood with a lot of dilapidated homes, crime, opiate problem is huge in our area. And so we pull in, and Mrs. Duke's not there. We're in the driveway. And here comes Mrs. Duke from the back of the house. And she has a spray bottle in her hand. You know, one of the clear ones with the red little trigger on it? And I'm thinking, what's going on here? So she walks out, she's perspiring, and then she sees her congressman in her driveway. And she said, oh my goodness. And I said, hi, you know, we introduced. I said, what are you doing? She says, I'm spraying for ants. So, wow, okay. A minute later, her son comes from around the back of the house. He's got white paint on his arm. And we introduce ourselves to each other, and he says, I said, what are you doing? He says, I'm painting the door in the back. I said, wow, do you want to come in? Yeah, we go in. It's real hot. She doesn't have air conditioning. We're sitting in her dining area. Beautiful home in this neighborhood that's being ravaged by all of these different forces that she didn't have anything to do with. Her husband passed away. He worked for the sheriff's department for 40 years. And when you go into the home, you can see it's a little older, but it's really nice. There's a beautiful mantel there, an old fireplace. It's got marble, impeccably kept. And she said, I can't go outside at night and even have a drink of cold water on my porch because I'm afraid to be out there at night. And she said, I sent my son to go try to figure out, maybe I could sell the house and maybe move to a better neighborhood. And so my son went out, she said, and found out, you know how much she could sell her house for? $4,000. This woman is trapped. She's done everything right. Her family has done everything right. And yet she's in a situation that she can't get out of. And she is just indicative of millions and millions of other Americans. And we see what's happening on the border with kids getting ripped from their mothers and sent away. But there's also auto workers in places like Youngstown, Ohio, where their factories have closed and they've had to leave their families and go to work in places like Youngstown for a couple weeks and go back. And now we're down another shift at our General Motors plant. And people are talking about having to leave and maybe leave their families in Youngstown and go to work somewhere else. Because the systems in the United States are either rigged or they're broken. And the economic system we know is rigged. When you see the top 1% get 90% of all new income growth in the United States, you know we have a problem. And when you see just today in the paper that wages are actually up 2.7%, but inflation is up almost 3%, we still have a growing income inequality problem in the United States. In healthcare, we spend 2.5 times more than any other country, industrialized country. We get worse results. Spending hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars on a system that is based on disease care, not prevention and keeping us healthy. In the education system, over 50% of our kids who go to public schools live in poverty. And we rank 39th in math and 24th in science. And each kid walking out of college has at least $30,000 in debt. Immigration system, clearly broken. Pension system, clearly broken. We have senior citizens filing bankruptcy at a rate that is 200% more than it was just a few years ago. People over 65 filing bankruptcy in America seems to be unacceptable. Our food system has created a society where 50% of our people have either diabetes or pre-diabetes. Our agricultural system in so many ways is broken. In the Great Lakes, we have algae blooms, dead zones at the mouth of the Mississippi River. I talked to a candidate today in Florida, and one of the major lakes in South Florida, huge algae blooms. And the climate, we see a 6% increase in the temperature over the next 70 years. And we see these 100-year floods and these 100-year fires happening every couple of years. And so what we need to do as Democrats, my friends, is we need to be bold. And we need to get in a fight. Now, I'm Irish, so I don't necessarily mind that. You know the old Irish saying, don't you? Is this a private fight or can anyone get into it? So I'm ready to get in a little bit of a fight, and I'm just saying to all of you, we need to come together and get in a big fight here in the United States of America. We need to create an economic system that puts people and workers and retirees first, not corporations first here in the United States. And we need to be bold. I know we're all here for the fight for 15, and we're for $15 an hour, but if we're going to be an aspirational party, we need to be the party that's working for $30 and $40 an hour jobs for Americans who work hard and play by the rules. That should be our aspiration. We need a healthcare system that covers everybody. And we need to be bold and say we support Medicare for every single citizen in the United States of America. Our immigration program needs to be expanded. We can both control the border and have comprehensive immigration reform that includes making sure we protect these DACA kids who have done nothing wrong in the United States. We need to make sure that we have debt-free and tuition-free college. We have a K through 16 system here in the United States, because if we can bail out the bankers who have done everything wrong, we can bail out the students who have done everything right. We can't talk about We can't talk about protecting Social Security. We need to talk about expanding Social Security here in the United States, so that the Mrs. Dukes of the world, or those truck drivers, those union members, those people who are filing bankruptcy here in the United States, we say to them, it is our commitment to them that they will never have to file bankruptcy in their retirement ever again here in the United States. We will protect you from that. And our criminal justice system is broke as well. When African Americans